Professor Patricia, Deputy Principal, University of the West Indies, Minister the Honourable Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism, Dr. Dacia Leslie, Research Assistant or Senior Research Fellow at SALISES, Professor Audrey Henry Lee, Chair of SALISES, Director of SALISES, Professor Ghani, Director of SALISES Trinidad, Professor Emeritus, haven't seen you in a long while. Prof, welcome here, Prof. Members of the Ministry of Tourism, other invited guests, participants, panelists, welcome to the SALISES, the 2018 SALISES conference. Today we're going to be focusing on smart growth, looking at how tourism contributes to the sustainable development growth. My name is Lloyd Waller. I'm the chair for this particular session. I have been working with Minister Bartlett as the senior advisor for the last 2 years, and in the last 2 years, Minister won't say this, I'll say it, tourism has become part of the sustainable development growth agenda, largely as a result of Minister Bartlett's work. And he won't say it, he's too humble to say it. As a matter of fact, last year the United Nations World Tourism Organization actually had initiated an International Year of Sustainable Tourism, where they looked specifically on SDG goals 8, 8.9, 11, and 17. Minister Bartlett had an international conference that very same year. I think the conference ended the entire year on a great high in terms of highlighting all of the different achievements of the UNWTO and Jamaica and the world in terms of tourism development and trade, tourism and development, tourism and SDG, tourism and entrepreneurship, tourism and many other different aspects of social, economic and political life. I am very happy today to be here chairing this panel and introducing these esteemed persons. And without further ado, because we are late for time, let's start by introducing Professor Kawa. I don't know, Prof, should I say anything about you? No. Oh, no, let me. Many persons don't know, but Prof Kawa is actually one of my mentors on campus. If I have any problems, any jams, anything whatsoever, Prof Kawa, I'll call him and say, Prof, let's go and have a drink. And we've had many drinks because I've been in many different problems and for myself in different situations. Prof, I'm happy to be here and thanks for coming. All right.
Thank you very much, our Chair, our Honourable Minister, members of the Tourism Ministry and Business Fraternity, our UWI colleagues, and other international colleagues who are attending this meeting, this conference. I would like to greet you warmly on behalf of the University of the West Indies. We consider this to be a major activity that as a university we must do, and indeed we do see it, as a responsibility. I would like to quickly, since the chairman has already warned us on time, I was indicate that I was struck by the special remarks, and following that line, there is 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, SDG 8 and 17, and I thought I could use those as a backdrop, to the comments that I'm going to make. The SDG 8 is really about decent work and economic growth, and what else can be more important, than that? The UWI has been contributing considerably, and I think SALISES is in a much better position to highlight how we have contributed on the economic growth, but I wanted to comment on the issue of decent work. The university has, over the last 15 years or so, engaged in the development and implementation of occupational and environmental safety programs. We started these programs about more than 10 years ago. Close to 300 or so students across the Caribbean have been trained at both Mona and St. Augustine at a level of a bachelor's, master's, and we have graduated one PhD and several PhD colleagues who are in it. So there is a contribution we are making on the issue of promoting decent work. And Minister, we are very pleased to hear that the Occupational Health and Safety Law, though it has been languishing for a long time, about 20 years or so in the making, comes and goes, but we hear this time it is really going to come. And I think it is extremely important that the government and the private sector, the trade unions and employers, come together to put into effect this act that will protect the work environment and give us all a decent place to work in. Partnerships for growth, for the goals, that is SDG 17. I think that is extremely important, and perhaps, Chair, just 2 minutes, on it. Later on in the afternoon in my presentation, I will indicate the need for enhancing collaboration. We are collaborating, sure, but we are not collaborating enough. When you look at, for example, knowledge generation, which is absolutely essential for the implementation of the SDGs, Jamaica collaborates with Trinidad at number 5. Number 1 is US, Canada, UK, and Germany and other places. And other countries in the Caribbean don't have as many Caribbean countries in that rank. All top 5 collaborators are from outside. Now, if we are looking at our own environment, our own water, our own fish, our own ganja, our own everything, if we are not putting our efforts together to actually look at them, we're going to be left behind. I just don't see how we are going to be able to move as quickly and as effectively as we can to do that. And coupled with that, we have a problem in terms of knowledge generation, research. Quick estimates, we really don't know the real numbers. We don't know how many people are involved in research. We don't know exactly how much money we spend on research. We don't know what equipment we have to do the research. I mean, this is extremely important for us, but for a long time, we have not been able to address it. As a percentage of GDP, estimates have it anywhere between 0.06 to 0.1 or so % of our GDP being spent on research and development. That kind of investment cannot produce the kind of knowledge in the right amounts and at the right rate that is required to give us the development, the decent work, the economic growth that we need. We have to figure out some way in which we can invest. And so we are very happy about Minister Bartlett's thrust of enhancing tourism through research. I happen to have heard him, one time, and I was very impressed with the trajectory, that is taking. So not only should our beaches be pretty and our roads be nice and organized, but the strategic areas of our coral reefs, the quality of our water, the linkages that we need to make with the agriculture and so on. All of these things have to be researched and brought into the mix that will produce tremendous benefits for us. Just coming back from Cuba last week and looking at their products, our products are very superior. Our hotels are excellent. Tourists like them. The vibes are good and so on. So if we were to really dig deep into our strategic capability and produce a sustainable product that will endure, I think we have a very, 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 very good chance of actually doing so. And at a regional conference like this, SALISES, named after a great man of economics, provides us with the best opportunity to look for and implement mechanisms of both collaborating but also finding ways in which we can enhance the investments in tourism. Collaboration is really needed, not just between the academics, but also academics and politicians, and parliamentarians, and the private sector, and the government. We need collaborations across the board. And I would say right now, if you do a deep analysis, we're going to find ourselves wanting, and I'm challenging the SALISES really to help us. Sociology, economics, and other things, and you probably could be in a much better position to help us find that missing link that would then help us to actually have the collaborations, that we need to do. I had a chance to speak to the leaders of CARICOM on science, technology, and innovation. They are looking for solutions. They don't have the solutions. They are looking to us intellectuals to try and dig deep into our capabilities and produce the kind of agenda that is necessary to drive economic and social development in our country. So I'm pitching very much for stronger collaborations, but more importantly to look for mechanisms to actually do so, but also to advise that without the necessary investments into these efforts, we are going to have a problem. But it is within us to be able to find those mechanisms and convince the public that we will deliver, and also do deliver. Thank you very much, and I wish you a successful day.
Prof. Kawa, thank you very much. I'd like to just say to you that the Ministry of Tourism, well, I'm speaking objectively here now, and I'm not speaking with my UWI hat. The Ministry of Tourism is not more than just a ministry. It's actually a think tank. I do remember once, very recently, I think we had a presentation at the Cabinet, and when we stepped in, the Prime Minister referred to the staff at the Ministry of Tourism as the University of Tourism. For many reasons, we have Dr. Spencer, who Minister plucked temporarily from UWI. We have Caroline McDonald-Riley, who is an attorney at law, but worked at UWI as well in the Department of Economics, and we have Kerry, who went to UWI, but Dr. Wallace, his area of expertise has significantly added value to the Tourism Enhancement Fund. The Ministry of Tourism, or the University of Tourism, or the think tank of tourism, is in that particular place and space to add value to the nation and the region. And as you know, that is actually what is happening. And as a result of that, Minister Bartlett has received a number of awards in the last 2 years, too many to name. Minister of the Year, Minister of the Universe, Minister of the Galaxy. For the hard work that he has been doing. I didn't remember to recognize the program chair and Pat, where are you? Pat, I'm so sorry, Dr. Pat Northover, whose algae is trading to peddle. That's the only word I can use, algae. I'm so sorry. It's nothing short of peddling. That way what went on here. And Dr. Barbara Carberry, welcome back. Now, Dacia Leslie. This Dacia was sitting down there, and Alger introduced her as a research fellow. And while I was outside, Dacia came to me and saying, "Hi, how are you? I'm introducing myself to you." And she said to me, "You used to teach me." And Dr. Leslie, you aged me immediately right there and then. So she's here now to give a presentation on sustainable futures. So Dacia, please.
Thank you, Dr. Waller. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Tourism Minister, the Honourable Edmund Bartlett, Thank you, Professor Kevonne, who is the Deputy Principal for the UE, University Director of SALISES, Professor Aldrin Henry Lee, and of course our Chair, Dr. Lloyd Waller. Good morning. I take great pleasure in being a part of this indelible occasion, which marks the launch of the Sustainable Futures Policy Brief series. It is a series which is in keeping with the vision of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of creating an inclusive and equitable world. Indeed, no one should be left behind as a result of a lack of knowledge vis-a-vis pathways to transformation. As such, a series, which is a new initiative of SALISES, provides an interdisciplinary medium through which leading professionals, critical thinkers, public policy analysts, and development practitioners are able to extend their reach to a general audience in seeking to respond to breaking issues, strengthen information sharing on strategies for action, and draw attention to important lessons and recommendations for policy practice to better engage with challenges facing Latin America and the Caribbean. I must say that the series has been in the making for some time and would not have been possible without the support and assiduousness of Professor Aldrin Henry Lee, University Director of SALISES, Dr. Patricia Northover, Chair of the Sustainable Futures Policy Brief Steering Committee, Annie Paul, Senior Publications Officer at SALISES, and Ambassador, the Honourable Dr. Richard Bernal, Pro-Vice Chancellor for Global Affairs, University of the West Indies. I would also like to thank Richard Leach, Orin Spence, Kevin Fraser, Nama Mullah, and all the contributors for their valuable input. Today, I ask you to turn your attention to imperatives emphasized in the first brief entitled Building Resilience, Imperative Questions for Caribbean Policymakers and DRM Practitioners. It was written by Dr. Barbara Carby, Director of Disaster Risk Reduction at the UE. I won't go into the details of what I think is a compelling narrative, but I would like to invite you to obtain your personal copy if you're not yet in possession of it. The brief and information on how you can contribute to the series is available at the conference registration desk and will be made available on the SALISES and Sustainable Futures for the Caribbean conference websites. Now, having said all of that, with the limited powers vested in me, I declare the Sustainable Futures Policy Brief launched.
Good afternoon. I'm really happy to welcome you all to this event, which is a youth workshop which is being hosted by the SALISES, the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, and it's part of our outreach activities geared towards integrating youth into the deliberations we will hold over the period of April 25th to April 27th on our conference themed Sustainable Futures for the Caribbean, Critical Interventions and the 2030 Agenda. So the idea behind this youth workshop is that what we're trying to do, if we're looking at towards our attentions, if our attention is focused on the future, then we need to look at the next generation. We need to look at the youth. We need to be able to hear what their idea of the future is like and whether or not they think the goals that are articulated by the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Agenda, are relevant to them and to what extent do they overlap with their own interests. So today we've gathered a diverse section of youth who will together brainstorm some of the issues of sustainable futures, looking at themselves, looking at Jamaica, looking at their communities, identify some of the obstacles and some of the challenges that they face, but also articulate what they think are viable pathways forward. So that what we hope will come out of this intervention is gathering knowledge from different constituencies who are not normally included in this big agenda concerned with envisioning development futures. So we would like to have a bottom-up process, and so this becomes a very important element in that outreach. So we're hoping that the conference will be very well attended, and we have over the 3 days. The first day is going to be looking at foresight and integration dynamics, so looking at some of the challenges involved in regional integration processes, but also thinking about issues in terms of communities. To what extent are communities pulling together to find common solutions to common problems or not? So we're looking at issues related to crime and violence, we're looking at issues of migration, we're looking at issues related to participatory development and sustainable development at the local governmental level on day one. We'll have at the end of day one a public forum looking at transforming futures at risk, violence, death, and climate change catastrophes, which will allow us to bring in the community from around the area in Montego Bay, where the event will be hosted, to speak to some of these challenges that we face, guided by some of the experts that we will bring into conversation for that event. On the following day, we'll have the theme, Leave No One Behind, which is part of the Principles of Sustainable Development. And we'll have a focus on issues related to inclusion, inclusionary development. And our keynote speaker, Sir Arthur Lewis Distinguished Lecturer, Professor Melissa Leach from the Institute of Development Studies, would look at the issues of finding transformational pathways to just and sustainable futures, which will be one of the highlights of the event in the evening. And on the last day, we'll be focused on smart growth. And we'll open with a sustainable tourism plenary and a keynote speech by the Honourable Edmund Bartlett looking at resilience in the tourism sector. Certainly, in the context of a small island state, we have a lot of challenges with respect to climate change and climate change catastrophes, as the events of Irma and Maria highlighted last year, November. So we need to build resilience, but we need to build resilience bottom up. So it has to be inclusive, it needs to be focused on the small man, the small business person, it needs to include youth, it needs to include diverse constituency, including the aged. So we hope through this youth workshop and through the conference to bring to bear some of these issues by having multiple voices involved. Out of this conference, we'll have a post-workshop consultation in which we'll basically rehash and say, well, what have we really achieved? What are we trying to bring about as a result of this intervention? And get the youth engaged in thinking about the takeaways from their involvement in a broader project looking at sustainable development. And hopefully in that post-conference workshop, we'll be able to brainstorm ideas for grants which can be used to foster youth development and to bring in those who are often marginalized in society and communities, bring them to the center of our discussion. As the theme of our workshop today is called Reset the Thing, Fuel Future, and it's about Agenda 2030 and having knowledge emerge from the margins. So I think it's overall a wonderful package of activities that will help us to take the steps we need to move forward to achieve the sustainable development and the future that we want. It is fuel future, and we need to take ownership over that. And this is one way in which we hope the university, in celebrating its 70th anniversary, will be able to support this. And with the support of our partners, Jamaica National Group, the United Nations Development Program, the National Integrity Action Jamaica, USAID, as well as the Jamaica project led by Professor Rosalie Hamilton, that we'll be able to achieve our goals together.
My name is Kevonne Martin. I'm the Executive Director for Equality Youth JA, a youth organization that focuses on social justice advocacy, especially for LGBT youth. What I've gotten from today is that it is really an interesting forum for young persons to discuss development plans. I think it's needed and I think it's necessary. However, what I'm looking forward to is for these ideas to be communicated to policymakers, for those decisions that need to be taken, that they are taken and that young people's voices are listened to in a broader sense. And that's really what I hope to gain from it today and what I look forward to seeing going forward into the conference.
Hi, my name is Alnastazia Watson, President-elect of the Integrity Action Movement. Now, today at the workshop put on by SALISES, it has really provided young people with a platform for them to voice their opinions and to play an integral role in securing a future which was meant for them. Now, I'm really intrigued and really fascinated, and I'm looking forward to some of the outcomes from today's workshop, and we're even looking forward to the conference next week to see how young people can further the dialogue on securing future where, you know, we can work, raise families, and do business in a peaceful Jamaica. And yeah.
So hi everyone, my name is Seantee. I'm a Janeway representative for the University of Technology. We're here today at UWI-Mona. We're having a youth discussion based on sustainable development. These youth you see behind me, they're very passionate about this discussion today, discussing what they would like to see for future Jamaica. So we hope that this discussion will not just stop here, but these future plans that we have will be beneficial to Jamaica and spread across the nation. Thank you.
So as usual, excellent work. Excellent work, SALISES. Excellent work. I think they deserve a second round of applause for the work that they're doing. So now for the moment that we've been waiting for. Actually, Minister Bartlett just returned from South America, where he went to Argentina, Peru, Colombia, and Chile. From that, it is estimated that we should be doubling the number of persons coming from Latin America from 40,000 per year to 60 to 70,000 per year, and non-stop flights. Maths. Almost double. I should have said almost double. And we are expected to also see non-stop flights from Latin America. And I'd encourage Jamaicans to actually go to Latin America. Many persons tend to try to go Europe, but the reality of the situation is that there are many Latin American countries like Argentina, for example, which offer a similar experience, and in some instances a better experience than, for example, Madrid or Barcelona. I'm going to ask you to introduce Minister for us. I just must say, Minister won't sound tired, but you won't believe that he actually came off the plane last night at 9 o'clock. And drove down to Montego Bay last night and arrived in Montego Bay at 1 a.m. this morning, and got up this morning to come here. Right?
So I take great pleasure in introducing the Honourable Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism for Jamaica. He is recognized for his wide-ranging expertise and accomplishments in the political arena. Honourable Bartlett has given over 35 years of service to Jamaica, working in both chambers of Jamaica's Parliament, the Senate, and House of Representatives. Mr. Bartlett was first appointed Minister of Tourism in 2007, serving until December 2011. Prior to this appointment, he already had a solid track record of service as an outstanding legislator in central government in both chambers of Parliament. He served as Minister of State for Information, Broadcasting and Culture in the Office of the Prime Minister and was Minister of Youth, Sports and Community Development from 1980 to 1989. Later, he served as senator and opposition spokesman on various portfolios, including tourism from 1989 to 2007. While serving in the shadow cabinet following his first stint as tourism minister, Mr. Bartlett traveled the world forging alliances with strategic partners for global initiatives. He returned to the helm of the Ministry of Tourism following the February 2016 victory at the polls by the Jamaica Labour Party. Beyond the duties of his assigned portfolio, Minister Bartlett has continually championed the advancement of education, skills training, and job creation as ways of improving the lives of his constituents in East Central St. James. He is passionate about education, and so his efforts have been about creating scholarships for both students and teachers, thus raising the bar for educational achievements. He has also worked tirelessly to improve the welfare of the elderly and persons with disabilities in his constituency. Mr. Bartlett has also represented Jamaica regionally and internationally, and currently chairs the board of affiliate members of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO. He is the first person to serve on the executive of both the public and private sector arms of the UNWTO. During his first tenure as tourism minister, he served as vice chairman of the executive council of the UNWTO representing the Americas. He also served as vice president for the 19th General Assembly of the UNWTO held in South Korea in 2011. A graduate of the University of the West Indies, where he majored in accounting, he has worked at the senior management level in the areas of marketing and sales, as well as accounting, for major multinational companies operating in Jamaica prior to entering elective politics. Minister Bartlett has been married for over 35 years and has 2 children. His passions include cricket, dominoes, and dancing. Ooh. At work and at play, he lives by the words of Marcus Garvey, Jamaica's first national hero, which says, "God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. Let the sky and God be your limit, and eternity your measurement." It is with great pleasure I introduce to you the Honourable Minister, Edmund Bartlett. Please put your hands together and make him feel welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leslie. I think we do go overboard with these introductions. And in fact, sometimes we are so careful about details that we could put the poor subject at risk, particularly at home, when you're saying to the lady, is only 35 years, that she's married to this gentleman, and he thinks it's 45. So. I also try to give guidance to those who want to make long introductions of guest speakers to just remember one simple case that I had quite a few years ago. I went to the opening of the Special Olympics in Indianapolis in the US, and the guest speaker was the then Vice President of the United States of America. And the introduction went like this: "Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States." And he spoke for 5 minutes. I hope this introduction won't suffer a similar fate. But I'm delighted to be here today. I wanted to. Thank you, Professor Henry Lee, and Professor Kawa, and the distinguished professors and academics who are assembled here along with students like myself, trying to learn more about sustainability issues and to understand a little bit more about how we can use the tools that we have to do more to create economic well-being and to build a future for our people. Because in the final analysis, that's what we're about. We spend long hours, many years, researching and studying and discussing, interacting with, developing models and changing models to achieve two objectives: to have the well-being of our people secured and to build better relationships between ourselves. Because if these two things happen, then we truly will have sustainability. And I think Dr. Waller, who has been a real tower of strength to me over the last 2 years, and he's helped to guide and frame much of our intellectual discourses in tourism. And a lot of people sometimes don't understand how deeply intellectual tourism is, and how much of hard rigor has to be applied in developing concepts and models, and to be able to innovate and innovate and innovate, because that's what keeps you on the top of mind in the market. But more importantly, and before I present this little paper that I think you will see some of him all over, I just want to make the point that for us in tourism, sustainability is about three things. It's about the environment, which is the product, because that's what we market. And the essence of the experiences that we sell is derived from the environment, from what's happening with your flora and your fauna, what happens with the wonderful geophysical endowments which the divine has given you, and how you use it and how you present it. It has all to do with your agriculture and your cultural assets, and how you shape and build and present those cultural assets. And then it has a lot now to do with how do you husband these attributes which God has given to us on earth. And then you have to do them with economic sustainability. How do you build that well-being? How do you create the empowerment, the ability of the individual, not just to convert knowledge into material value at a price, but to be able to use that process to enrich him and to give him economic independence. So those are two key areas that tourism is concerned with. And the third area that tourism is very concerned with is social sustainability. And that has to do with communities. How do you build communities? How do you build human capacity? How do you train and develop the capacity of your people to produce more creative goods? And how do you make communities grow and become enriched as a result of tourism experiences? So these are the three broad areas that we are focused on. And those three areas require rigor, thinking and academic pursuits. It requires for us to spend long hours, not just framing the ideas, but being able to codify and position these ideas that they become available for further consideration and thought by other people. Because it is the process of refining these thinking and building out more specifics about them that we can then apply them into practical areas and bring value to our area. So we, therefore, in tourism are very driven by think tanks and seminars like this and what we call knowledge tourism. That's really what it is. It's about how to use this medium to generate newness, freshness, out of which comes innovation. Because we quite understand that innovation is not about inventions. Innovation is not about creating fresh things from nothing. Innovation is about adding value to that which we already know and have. So how do we make the things that are around us become more valuable and to enhance our own process? And that's why we have all these disruptions that happen daily in not just tourism, but globally. And these disruptions challenge the way we do things, the way we have known how to do things. But what these disruptions are doing is showing us new ways of doing the same things that we have always done. That is innovation. And that's what Jamaica has to get a hold of and a grip of. How do we do better the things that we know how to do? And that's what SALISES, which is the successor to what I knew, the ICR, is. I was telling Dr. Leslie that is 46 years ago I left and I knew ICR then. But I knew that ICR was the center for research for us. And new ideas were coming, and every week we were having sessions. I remember G. Beck and Norman Gerv. Hold on, I'm getting a little... And those series that we used to have, Poor Me Black, Poor Me Black Unfortunate, Poor Me Black Unfortunate Sufferer. And we could go on, and each week you had a different element of that until you get to a point where we understood who we are, where we are, but more importantly, what we must do. But that's a little long run-up to what we want to focus on a little bit, and that's the whole business of sustainable development and the whole matter of building resilience and the ability to respond. First of all, the ability to know what is happening around you. Then the ability to prepare for what is likely to come. And then the ability to manage it when it comes. And then to recover from it when it has come. And then to recover quickly, so as to reduce the level of disruptions that these events will cause, and they happen every day. So the attainment of sustainable development has become the main long-term policy goal of most countries across the world. At the heart of the notion is the question of how increasingly scarce natural resources can be prudently managed, and how economic growth can be aligned with the social and economic needs of local populations and communities, and the preservation of the natural environment. In 2016, the United Nations launched its Global Sustainable Development Agenda through the establishment of the Sustainable Development Goals that you know as SDGs, which expanded upon the Millennium Development Goals, which was the precursor, if you will, of that, which were previously established in 2009 and expired in 2015. 193 world leaders to date have already adopted the 17 SDGs, indicating their commitment to mobilize efforts to eradicate poverty, fight inequalities, and tackle climate change, while ensuring that no one is left behind. Countries adopting the SDGs have committed to a timeline of 2030 to achieve the targeted goals. The attainment of SDG will require stakeholders and policymakers across all segments and sectors of society to build partnerships, strengthen collaboration, and promote overall inclusiveness in the pursuit of broadly defined national objectives. Tourism has been identified as one of the main catalysts for the promotion of SDGs. The United Nations World Tourism Organization, that I'm very deeply involved in and has had the honor to serve at the highest level, recognized 2017, last year, as the year of sustainable tourism for development, and used the opportunity to focus on key issues of sustainability, such as inclusive and sustainable economic growth, social inclusiveness, employment and poverty reduction, resource efficiency, environmental protection and climate change, cultural values, diversity and heritage, and mutual understanding, peace, and security. And if I'm allowed, I wanted to make a big point about peace and security, because it forms part of what we call the tourism diplomacy. And it is built around enabling capacity of people in the areas to enhance themselves. And it speaks to a need to protect tourism from what is now increasingly being called over-tourism, which is a situation where the people of communities become overwhelmed by the impact of tourism and are being marginalized as a result. And at another place and time, I'll have more to say about that, because we are very concerned in Jamaica, and we're making steps through the restructured Tourism Enhancement Fund, which we'll talk about at another time. If you listen next week, perhaps, Dr. Waller, maybe next week, about this time, maybe. We'll have more to say about that. So the tourism sector has been specifically aligned with the promotion of SGD 8, and that is decent work and economic growth. And decent growth is at the heart of in Jamaica, our drive to build the human capital capacity within the industry. I want that point to be made again and again. Dr. Spencer is the guru that I have appointed in the ministry to spearhead that whole business of building out the strategies for human capital development within the industry. We've done a few things. We started with the training at the level of Team Jamaica. That's a basic level. And then we go with Heart and its entry-level arrangements. And then there is the tertiary institutions, such as yourselves and so on, who provide another level of training. And now we have just established and had the first cohort of graduates, the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation, which is a pathway institution for professionalism and is a certification institution, so to speak. So what we do is to take graduates from you who have no practical experience, certify them. And then we take people with practical experience who have no academic experience and certify them. So what we're saying is that we're creating a cadre of professional workers in the industry who will now be able to practice their art anywhere in the world. And that's a central pillar on which the whole business of driving decent work. There are 5 other elements of it, which I'll not bore you with here, but you will hear next week, because it's a centerpiece of my budget presentation. It's going to be the strategies to drive and develop human capacity in the industry. We're not hewers of wood and drawers of water only. Not in my time. So, SDG 12 is another area of serious concern for me, and that's responsible consumption and production. And we're talking about that as well next week. Because the industry is driven, like all other elements of economics, as you know, by demand and supply. Yes? The demand side of tourism is very expensive and costly to deal with. And so we leave that much to foreign direct investment. The big guys who make hotels and who build big airports and who make aeroplanes and have huge marketing engines that drive visitors into your destination. So the demand side is where the acquisition cost of tourism is. The supply side is the consumption side. It's what happens when the visitor comes to your destination, whose food they eat, whose car they drive, whose pots and pans and cans and kettles they use. Who owns the experience that they consume? They go to your parks and your markets. What do they buy? Do they buy your cultural assets, your wonderful art and your craft and so on? All of these are part of the consumption side. The street food, the festivals, the entertainment, the reggae, the nutraceuticals, the wraps and the oils and the spa applications and all these alternative medical applications that you give first, they go for health and wellness. And I'm getting in the body of the presentation ahead of myself. But it is what we're talking about, changing the consumption and production patterns in favor of the recipient countries. So as to the term I use that you will hear a little more, so as to plug the leakages by strengthening the linkages. So then SDG 14 speaks life below water. That's an area that we need to focus heavily on. We've not done much of it. What we've done with life below water is to decimate it. Yes, Doctor. That's true. What we've done is to kill the coral reefs and to destroy exactly. And to plasticize our oceans and kill the marine life and so on. That's what we do. So we have to spend some time looking at that. And the whole business of the blue economy is an area that begs for serious investigation, but application and utilization. And for us to begin to spend some money, invest in the blue economy and to benefit therefrom. Then SDG 8.9, which has direct references to tourism now. It says by 2030, of course, we should devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. So too does SDG 12B. which is to develop and implement tools to monitor sustainable development impacts for sustainable development tourism that creates jobs again, promotes local culture and products. It's so heavy within the mandate of tourism from the SGDs is this business of jobs, creating jobs and promoting local culture and products. And then finally, I suppose 14.7, which says by 2030, increase the economic benefits to small island developing states and least developed countries from the sustainable use of marine resources, including through sustainable management of fisheries, aquaculture, and tourism. The rest of what I have here, I'm going to distribute in the interest of time for you. But I want to focus on two key areas that we must build out in order to fulfill these goals that we have embraced. And indeed we have. The first is to build that capacity for the small and medium enterprises. And I've coined a phrase that is now being used in tourism circles across the world. I've added a T, I've inserted a T in the SME, so it now becomes SMTE, small and medium tourism enterprises. And I did that because 80% of tourism across the world is driven by small and medium and micro enterprises and activities. Because it is experiential tourism that is now driving the thrust of tourism development. And last year, 1.3 billion people crossed borders to consume those experiences and paid 1.3 trillion US dollars in the process. That the total value of their trade in services represented some 30% of global GDP. And also over $8 trillion in total demand by way of direct, indirect, and induced demand. So 10% of the world is employed to tourism. 400 million people worked in tourism last year. And that 10% of global GDP now is tourism. So next to finance, which is 19% of global GDP, is tourism. It's a higher contribution on oil and the distributive trade. 79 countries of the world have tourism GDP dependence of 10% and more. 79 today. And we in the Caribbean have the top 13. The number one in the world is the Maldives. That has a 75%, I think, followed by Antigua and Barbuda with 74. And the others go down the line. Jamaica is 13, with what is perceived to be a total of some 30% dependent. Statin says 8.4, but that's measured in a certain way, we understand. But when you add the induced and indirect, it's somewhere in the region of that. So how do we make these small and medium enterprises now really get them empowered and put in a position where the anomaly that now exists, or what I call it, the asymmetry that now exists, where 80% of tourism is owned and driven by the small and medium enterprises, but only 20% of the returns from tourism go to that group. So we have to balance, we have to find a rebalancing here. And this is one of the things that your minister and Little Jamaica have been championing in the world. This is why we get invited to all these many places to make speeches, as you hear. Next year, next month, Korea, area leaders invite us to come and talk to all the leaders in Korea, in Asia, not Korea, in Asia, in Seoul. And then the Pacific area having their World Summit back to back with that, and want us to come and talk about that and the other area I'm going to speak about. And it's happening. June is Jordan, having the same discussions and want us to come and speak. So Jamaica is taking leadership, thought leadership in these key areas. And we shouldn't take it too lightly. But because we have done something in regards to the small and medium tourism enterprises here, we have gone to the point where we have said, okay, fine. How do we empower this group? How do we give them more space? How do we enable them to convert their creative minds and thinking and thoughts and ideas into material value at a price? So the training and development, which I spoke about. But I didn't tell you that we have also established the CDI, which is the Craft Development Institute, along with the Edna Manley School of Culture, Arts. What is Edna Manley? Yeah. And we're doing the same things. We're going across the island like an open university. And we're finding these artisans who are talented. But there's a sameness of products in Jamaica that is causing us to not have comparative advantage, not even competitive advantage. That is causing us not to provide what we call an opinionated product that keeps the conversation going after they have bought it, and to talk about Jamaica and everywhere they go and say, yes, they can authenticate my visit because this is truly Jamaican, this is authentic. So we want to build their capacity and to broaden their creative horizon, to be able to produce a wider variety of authentic, autochthonous Jamaican products. And then when we do that, we know the capacity to convert is limited if there isn't capital available, if there isn't financing available. So we put $1 billion Jamaican dollars to Exim Bank and 200 million to Jamaica National Small Business. And we say, have this on lend to these people on the basis of ideas. So we're investing in ideas. And then we are building 5 artisan villages. First one in Falmouth, we broke ground a month and a half ago, and construction has already started for that. And in the artisan village will now be residing these artisans. So we named a nice phrase like artisan in situ, you know? Yeah. So when the visitor comes, he takes a creative piece, a design. He takes the design to the artisan, and then on his return from the country, he walks back with his finished product. 2 things happen here. He gets something authentic, unique, and truly Jamaican, and the artisan gets a price that makes him ahead of the curve, yes? What in economics you say, he has comparative advantage in price. So he doesn't have to worry about what the price is next door, because he's getting the price that he has put because of the uniqueness of his product. And then within that, we have now the artists and the traders and the craft traders and all the other musicians and so on, and food. So in this artisan village will be the artisan at work creating his product. Then they have the merchandising which takes place. Then there's the entertainment and the food and so on and so on. Total. That is part of changing the consumption patterns within tourism. And this is how we are moving to strengthen the small and medium enterprise. In addition, we are getting technological applications to enable connectivity between the artisan and the small farmers and the suppliers. And we've established a platform and then an app called Alex. And Alex is a technological tool that our little farmers in the hills can use to connect with the hotels on the plains. And not to stretch the presentation too long, then the issue of resilience and building capacity now to withstand what is now recognized as global shocks or global disruptions, to be more pedantic. So these global disruptions are happening, and they are devastating small countries, in particular vulnerable countries. And we in the Caribbean are among the most vulnerable, especially that we also have the highest level of tourism dependence in the world. That the Caribbean countries are among the most tourism dependent region on earth. So when 3 hurricanes hit you back to back at scales that are off the chart, and they tell me in Puerto Rico that when the winds hit the buildings, you're really encouraging me. I really want to stop, but but when the hurricanes hit the buildings, they shook as though it were earthquake. So that's not category 5. That's category something that we are yet to define. And the argument is that there are going to be more category some things that are going to be hitting us. And when Barbuda tried to deal with it, it was left as a piece of rock in the middle of the ocean. And Dominica lost 85% of its GDP. More than that. Then when earthquakes hit, and Mexico City told you the story, and when tsunamis come and Indonesia tells you the story, and then that is about seismic, climatic, and weather events. Then pandemics. And you are hit by SARS or H1N1 or chikungunya. And that reduces production and destroys capacity to produce more goods and services, as a result of which GDP shrinks. And then there is this new thing now called cyber crime and cyber attacks. And then there's ISIS and terrorism and other acts of God and the Queen's enemy. So when these things happen, how do you deal with them? How do you build resilience? How do you create capacity to withstand these events? And that's one of the things we have now to concern ourselves with. So out of the conference that we had last year in Jamaica, and we don't big it up enough, the conference that we had last year in Jamaica was the largest conference of its kind in the world. With 1,450 registered delegates, it was bigger than the United Nations General Assembly that was held in Chengdu. With presidents and secretaries general from international bodies and World Bank and IDB and CDB and the Japan Investment Corporation and a number of other leading world bodies came to Little Jamaica last year to discuss over 3 days huge segments of sustainability arrangements and issues, and dealt with wider partnerships including smart tourism applications and the whole business of disruptions. So out of it came the need for us to have a global center, because there's nowhere in the world where there's a repository of information and technical capacities to provide support for countries immediately, but more so to provide information as to how to track, to protect you, to manage, and to recover. And so it was decided that we should have such a center. And guess what? Jamaica was selected as the venue for the establishment of the center. And I'm pleased that the University of the West Indies has agreed that this center should be established here on Mona campus. And we have been on the road, Dr. Waller and I. We have been on the road. We just came back from Buenos Aires, where Little Jamaica was asked to address the G20 countries. And we spoke about the two things, the small and medium tourism enterprises and the global tourism resilience and crisis management center and observatory. And I want to make a point about the observatory, because that is the key. A couple of weeks ago, when an earthquake happened, measured at 7.8, I think, on the Richter scale, just a little outside of Honduras. And you know that between Honduras and Jamaica is about 200 or 300 miles of open sea, pure water, nothing else but water. And that earthquake triggered a tsunami alert, which we heard about 2 hours after. Think about what would have happened to Dr. Waller on the beach. All right. Dr. Leslie at Devon House having Devon Duppy. You understand what I'm saying? Now, the absence of a center that could, in real time, not real time, no, nano time, because the technology allows us for that, to be able to generate a warning across countries to say, wow, this earthquake has taken place. Bam, this tsunami warning is there. Get up to the higher points. Deal with your preparation that you know, you drilled, that you have gone through. So that's the first, communication. So this resilience center is going to be equipped to provide communication in real time in terms of all these disruptions when they come. And the second is the capacity now to research and to put lecturers and teachers and create seminars and think tanks across the world where intellectual exercises can be had in this regard. And then to have technical capabilities to assist in helping to develop standards, building codes, and to guide countries as to how to build resilience. And then thirdly, to manage and recovery and to recover quickly. So this resilience center is going to be at the heart of the response that we're making to build capacity and to secure for us a future on planet Earth. God bless you.
should I say this, Minister? The energy that you just saw here after traveling for 15 hours and sleeping for 2 hours. Can you imagine trotting behind this man after he's had a full day's sleep? All right. No, so I now invite, well, before that section here, Pat Northover to Professor Pat Northover to give a gift to Minister Bartlett, followed by Dr. Leslie to give a gift to Prof. Kawa.
You want me to come for it?
Oops. We need to.
Come on.
It's with really deep pleasure that I wish to give you this small token of our appreciation. We have here a selection of works that we publish at the Institute, our Research Day publication for 2018, which highlights our university, and the policy brief, the first one that we've issued, and the films that we've produced and we launched last year, which includes an animation series for children. So we wanted you to have access to the type of knowledge and creativity that's coming out of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Jamaica. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I believe that after today, there's going to be a new relationship between SALISES and tourism.